trust you've all had a chance to take a look at the agenda and the accompanying documents. And for starters, I don't know who we have. Anyone with any citizens here wanting to make any comment at any point? But if we do, please be sure to let us know. You can either email Kendall. I think we decided we're going to have them email you.
Yes.
Do you want to go ahead and put your email in the chat? We don't need to put that public, but we can put it in the chat, because if they're in the Zoom meeting, then they would be able to see that. Of course, you already put that public on the agenda, which is sufficient as well. But if you want to put that in the chat for anyone that wants to make public comment at the time we get to there, please email Kendall, and you'll get 3 minutes, of course, to speak about anything that's not on the agenda. And then at the time, if we get to the agenda, when we get to the agenda item, you'll get a chance there if appropriate as well. So introductions, and I guess always the best way to do this for Zoom, because everyone's screen looks a little different, is probably the best way is I'll call out your name. I'll let you introduce yourself and tell your position. And I guess we'll just start with PRAC members. Probably the most organized way to do this. So Tim, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tim West. I just joined the Park and Recs Advisory Committee a couple of months ago, and I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to enhancing and helping the park system grow and be the best it can.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, it's Andy Crump. Hey, Dan, how you doing? Good to see you. Actually, that's kind of one of the reasons why I kind of got involved, is because of our mountain bike group involvement with Metro. So I'm been excited to see the Newell Creek Canyon and Tualatin Mountains and Jalen Ridge and all that other kind of fun stuff. So anyway.
Okay, thank you. Brent?
Hey everybody, Brent Haverkamp, PRAC committee board member. Don't know what else to say right now, Troy, other than happy to be here, excited to be here, and want to help promote parks and recreation systems within Oregon City and our surrounding areas.
Well, that's perfectly fine. You know, when we do this in person, we just go down the line and just say our name, and so that's sufficient. Sean?
Sean Datchler here. I've been around a little while and enjoy the work we do.
Great. Karen?
Karen Morey, starting my second term on PRAC. Love the parks, but my particular interest is the cemetery and its history.
Okay, and then I am Troy Bollinger. I'm the chair of PRAC. And then we'll hold off on the other introductions. Like I say, typically when we do this in person, we just go down the line for PRAC members, but we will get a chance to introduce all the others that are here at the time that we kind of turn the baton over to you for a minute to do your presentation. We'll give you a chance to introduce yourself and tell what you're here to speak to us about. So moving on to the approval of the minutes. Everyone on all of our board members here have a chance to take a look at the minutes. Any questions or items of clarification before we make a motion to approve?
Okay, this is Karen. I move we approve the minutes as distributed.
Sean here, I second that.
Any clarification or question before we vote? Kendall, you want to vote? Or
Sure. Tim West,
I agree.
Karen Morey,
Aye.
Troy Bollinger,
aye.
Jeff Sargent, Derek Kugel, Andy Crump,
Hi.
Sean Datchler,
Aye.
Brent Haverkamp.
Aye.
All right.
All right. Kendall, have we had any requests for public comment in the last little bit?
No.
Okay, perfect. Then we will move on to our general business. And pardon me while I maneuver with several different screens here, but first we'll have a presentation from Dan with Metro Parks about Newell Creek Canyon project. So Dan, take it away, please.
Thanks very much. If it's okay, I think I'd like to let our Metro's Parks and Nature Director, John Blasher, who is here, give just some brief comments, and then I'll start into my presentation right after that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you. Good evening, committee members. Thank you, Director Reed. My name is John Blasher. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm the director for Metro's Parks and Nature Department. Really excited to be here this evening and join you all. I would have loved to do this in person and get a chance to make the rounds, but just excited to be here and have Dan provide a presentation and update on Newell Creek Canyon, and extremely excited that we have our Metro Counselor from District 3 in your district. Counselor, thank you too. It's been a long night of many meetings. Counselor Lewis, and so I'll turn over to Counselor Lewis to share any thoughts or words before we let Dan go and walk through the presentation at Newell Creek Canyon.
I think for time purposes, I'm not supposed to say anything, so I'm just going to say thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight. I look forward to the presentation and discussion. Again, my name is Christine Lewis, and the work that I do at Metro is fun and exciting, but the Parks Department, particularly with our nature investments through the series of bonds we've had, is one of the most exciting things, because you can really see it down here in District 2 make such a difference. So I'll turn it back over to very capable and excellent staff.
Thank you, Counselor Lewis. So again, my name is Dan Moeller. I use he, him pronouns. My title is the Conservation Program Director for Metro's Parks and Nature Department. And I oversee science, land management, real estate, and planning and design for Parks and Nature. So thanks to Kendall too for the invite to come tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to give a short presentation, which I'm going to call up here in a moment, to talk about the status of Newell Creek Canyon and where we are in the nature park development. I have 10 slides, so it'll go relatively quickly. And then I think the idea is that, question and answer after I'm done. I'm happy to provide any additional information that I might have missed or answer any questions. So with that, I believe I'm going to attempt to share my screen, just right here. And John or Kendall or something, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the presentation? Okay. Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I assume everyone can hear me. If you can't, or if you need any, anything else along the way, just raise your hand and I'll do my best to recognize you. So in front of me is a quick little aerial photograph of the Oregon City area. You'll see downtown Oregon City, Willamette Falls, the river, intersection with the Tualatin River. And what we're focusing on tonight is Newell Creek Canyon, which is highlighted. And it's a heavily wooded 230 plus acre site that's situated just to the east of downtown. And you'll see it here, I outlined in bright green or filled in bright green. And close by to Newell Canyon is the recently completed trail network and overlook at Kenema Bluff natural area. And then to the east of Highway 13, there are 3 more parcels of land where conservation and regional trail planning efforts are also underway. So this is just a quick piece of context for the conversation. My next slide shows Newell Creek Canyon itself, and access that's being developed at this site serves to create an urban nature experience complete with a trailhead, which means parking, restrooms, trails, and additionally a 3-mile long trail loop system through the forested area with both hiking and cycling trails. As you may or may not know, historically, illegal camping has impacted the natural resources in this area and at times the community's ability to safely visit the site. And creating formal facilities to welcome the community into the site activates positive site usage that supports conservation goals and also creates a safe and welcoming space for all communities to experience and engage in nature-based recreation. And just the graphic itself, you'll see here, which I'll be referencing throughout the rest of the slides, you'll see the day use area, which is where the entry to the site is. So that's outlined in blue. There's the trail network, which is in orange. And then there's the conservation area, which is the portion of the site that is not developed formally for human access, and that's the green portion. So just referencing again, I'm going to talk about the day use area. So the blue area, this is a zoomed in photograph of that. And this is just the development drawing. And this day use area, is going to provide, or does right now, it's complete. It provides automated security gates, a general entry experience, restrooms, parking, opportunities for an accessible trail, and benches and picnic locations. And like I said, this portion of the site is deemed complete, but we have it right now secured because the rest of the trail system that we'll talk about in just a minute into the canyon is not yet complete. So we're securing this portion of the site until the entire site is safe and complete, so we can open it all at once. And maybe I'll just do some quick point outs here if this is helpful. It should only take a minute, but I just wanted to show you, there are all these numbers on the side. So I figured I would just talk to you about what in fact is out here. So we have a restroom in this area. We have a drop-off area right here where when you pull in from Fox Lane, people can come in and, if they need to before they park, drop some folks off. We have bus parking for, school buses, for example. We have an important emergency access lane or emergency access off of Gales Lane here where emergency vehicles can enter. That wasn't for general public access, but emergency. General parking stalls. So we have ADA kind of standard stalls and then regular parking stalls. These hammerheads over here were installed for like garbage and other types of service vehicles that come into these lanes so that they can do a turnaround here safely. And I understand part of that was to minimize disruption to the neighborhood so that in the past, I believe, for example, garbage trucks had to pull in and put in and deploy loud, backup signals and other things to back out of these spaces. So now there's some turnaround opportunities here for those types of vehicles. We have a nice canyon overlook. So there's an overlook here where folks can visit and take a look over the larger canyon. This is the official trailhead where you would drop into the soft surface trails that are being built down below. Picnic tables, benches over, just examples, benches in these areas. The paths here in this color are gravel paths that are not facilitate easy walking around the site. And then there's also some grass reinforced paving here that allows emergency vehicles and other vehicles that may have to access through here a way to access the site, but not sink into the grass in wet times or create additional damage. So overall, that's the kind of general makeup of the day use area. Just some photographs for you to look at. So the parking is in, as you can see. You're looking at some of the bioswales and basic stormwater treatment and plants that have been installed. This is an example of, or it is the restroom building that's on site. Here are some examples. This is a bench that you'll see out there and what a picnic table looks like. So basic park facilities. And now I'll talk to you a little bit about the trail system. So that day use area we were looking at is situated right here in blue. So that's where all the kind of entry visitor facilities are. And now we'll talk about the trail system dropping down into the canyon. So you'll see three different colors of trail that are depicted on this image. And the magenta lines that you'll see here, if you can see this hand that I'm sort of dragging around, these are all multi-use trails. So these are trails that can be used by walkers and bicycles. You'll see the blue trails here are cycling specific trails. So these were built for bikes to create a cycling specific experience. And they move down through the canyon, and they're directional in terms of the off-road cycling trails. And then the orange trail loop here is hiking only. So these are for foot traffic only. And you'll see some other little symbols on here. So this is an overlook where folks can get down from the top and actually look at Newell Creek itself. You'll see some bridges in here. I have some images of later that were constructed to allow folks to access over either tributaries to Newell Creek or Newell Creek itself. And I think there's some other natural features like the sag ponds and the boulder garden here are also on the photograph. So that's generally what the trail system looks like. And this is the section of the nature park that's still under construction. And we'll show you a little bit more about that. These are examples. Here's an example of one of the bridges that's in the canyon right now. This bridge is complete. This was during construction. This one is fully complete now. And this is just a foot traffic bridge here. This is one of the trails. This is kind of an early stage of the trail that's being put into the natural area, but it shows you that these are going to be natural surface trails, really intended to immerse people in nature so that you really do get a natural experience down in the canyon, but they're built so that they can be easily maintained and that they're durable. And then just the last slide I have here to talk about is just the timing of the project. And like I said before, the day use area, we've deemed that complete. All facilities are installed and have been inspected, so those are accepted. So now we're working on the trails and the bridges that are within the canyon. And we expect the entire project to be wrapped up by October of this year, October of 21. All of the trails and all of the facilities will be complete. And throughout the year, we'll be working with Oregon City and other partners to talk more about when, official openings and other, types of ribbon cuttings and celebrations might happen, depending on, lots of other factors, of course. So that's a brief presentation. I'm sure I left lots of gaps in and maybe created more questions. So Director Blasher and I would be happy to answer any of your questions if you have them. And thanks again for the opportunity to talk with you a little bit this evening.
Well, Dan, thank you very much to you and your team. There were probably, I'm going to say, 3 of us currently on the committee that actually toured the site you're talking about. I want to say about 2 years ago, before any of the ground was broke at all. So I'm personally excited to go kind of take a look at what, in reality, what you've shown us on pictures here. So, because it'll be a lot different than what we saw in person. But I do have some hands up. So Tim, you had some questions or comments?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much. So I was a vandal or a trespasser about a week and a half ago. Had to get my snow tires put on my car up at Les Schwab, and I took a walk in the rain I went underneath and around the fences, and I did that Newell Canyon walk, and oh, what a tremendous resource we have. I think it's very exciting. There's tremendous possibilities for everybody in the Portland area to walk a really cool loop right there. I did have some questions about this. Number one is, are you guys using any volunteer help to help you construct or maintain any of these paths in the Newell Creek Canyon?
Thank you for that question. So Metro doesn't use volunteers right now to, not to say that we couldn't in the future, but we don't use volunteers for capital construction. There are a number of just liability issues when we utilize that kind of thing in this sort of nature park public construction. But we do rely and use volunteers. I shouldn't say rely, but we utilize volunteers for trail maintenance throughout our portfolio. So we expect in this part of the region, especially like Andy mentioned with the cycling community and the hiking community, we expect that there might be interest in terms of, long-term maintenance for this site. And, we've always welcomed that kind of, that kind of opportunity if the community's interested and if the opportunities line up with each other.
Very good. So while I get to that, I have helped with the Oregon Trail Keepers. They're a great organization that construct and maintain paths all over the place, all over Oregon, most notably McIver and the Gorge and on the coast. So they're a great resource and they're very, very well qualified. You're probably familiar with these guys. But okay, so one of the things that I did see was a lot of campers on top of the hill. This is something that's going to dissuade a lot of people from hiking there. Although they weren't anywhere close to the trail itself, they're way up on the ridge, and there's just piles and streams of garbage coming down from the top of the ridge. Do you guys have any input with that? Are you gonna either clean it up, put dumpsters up there for these guys to clean up for themselves, or get rid of them?
Thanks for that question. It's a complicated question. One of the things so there are lots of areas up there, but I believe some of the camps, if not most, that you're talking about at the top are actually on private property. So the property line in some of those areas is pretty complicated. And so if campers aren't on metro property, we don't have the authority to enforce our rules, on private property. So a lot of the times historically, especially at Newell Canyon, because of the kind of unusual, private public property lines, it's been complicated to be able to address some of those. But what we do region-wide is we do have what are called our Title 10 rules that prohibit camping, or only allow camping in designated campsites. So when folks are camping outside of those sites, we do enforce those rules, and we work compassionately and responsibly, especially to help folks who are experiencing houselessness and other crises in their lives, to try to transition from some of these spaces to long-term, respectful, sustainable living conditions. And we've done that actually in Newell Canyon over time. We've been able to transition folks from living outdoors in very difficult conditions to long-term housing. So we're going to continue to use all the tools that we have and take all of those approaches to make sure that we're protecting natural resources and also finding ways to help folks who are in crisis.
That's really cool. I appreciate your perspective on that. I guess my last question, I know that there's tons of tree damage down there, just like throughout the Oregon City area, but what are your plans for that additional conservation area that has not been developed? Because that's really the majority of the place.
Yeah, great question. I appreciate you bringing that up. So we have, for all of our sites where we're doing work, we have what are called site conservation plans. And so they set out conservation targets or objectives for, set up conservation goals. And then they also set up projects and then ultimately measurables that we can look at to determine if or how we're meeting those conservation objectives. So in Newell Canyon, one of our primary targets is the health of Newell Creek. So in that area, in that conservation area, for the last really almost 20 years, we've been working to restore habitat. So that means removing invasive plants. We've been planting native plants, and we've even been doing some in-stream work to help to benefit native fish. And so those are in general, and I'd be happy to visit and bring one of our scientists and talk in more depth about some of the actual projects that we're planning down there and more details about the conservation work. But in general, that's what we're working on in that area. And, down trees and other kind of things that happen in storms, those are natural processes that at times can even be beneficial to wildlife. So when, trees fall over or even sometimes break in half, they create habitat for birds, insects, even small mammals. And, we have, flooding events and other things like that, at least in the short term can be looked at as destructive, but long term, oftentimes they have natural benefits. So we work to manage those. But at times when there are things that we need to stabilize, we do take actions to make sure that we're protecting the natural resources for really which we bought the property.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And Dan, thank you for that. Sean.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for presenting this to us. We've been looking forward to this for a while. I have three topics to speak about. One, I'm wondering if you can refresh my memory or our memory on a land swap. We've gone through some leadership changes in the Parks Department, and I really can't remember if that ever took place, but it seems to me there was a topic around that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Right, I think when when Don Robertson was the interim director, I spoke with Don. There's a parcel. I don't have a great map to show you right now. I'd be happy to, again, I'm sorry, or I can send it to you. But there's a parcel within Newell Creek Canyon that's owned by the city of Oregon City. And it's actually part of that, I'm not gonna reshare it, I'll take too much time, but part of that hiking loop that I showed you that was at the north end of the nature park goes through that parcel. And so there are a number of ways that we can work through that, as Metro is the manager of the site. If we're managing resources on other agencies' land, we sometimes develop things that are called intergovernmental agreements or IGAs for us to do that work. But in this case, because we're creating like these capital assets and ultimately managing it long-term, we approached the city to see if that was something that they wanted to transfer to Metro for both simplicity and to relieve, any kind of potential liability around that. Since it doesn't have development value, it has no value. It's virtually valueless other than for natural resource purposes. So that was the approach that I made with Don. But I think at the time he said that there were other pressing issues, and so that's where we left it at that point.
So I understand that it has been turned over to you, or we still need to turn it over?
It would be a decision for the committee to decide. It has not been turned over. Okay. There hasn't been a real estate transaction about it. So and I think, like Don said, I think he said at the time that there were just other priorities. So we'd be happy to talk about it. If anybody wants to talk about it again, or just to kind of see what that might look like, we'd be happy to come back or whatever venue works for you. We'd be happy to talk more about it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that definitely answers my question. My second one relates to phases of this project. You've made no mention of that tonight. Are there other phases?
No, thank you. No, we don't have any other planned phases at this point. Initially, to be honest, we had planned that the entire project would finish at one time, but I guess as a lot of folks who manage projects know, sometimes it doesn't always go that way. So in this case, we finished the day use parking area that finished up first, and the trail area, which is down in the canyon, took a little bit longer. So all part of the same phase, but that's what I showed you tonight is the complete nature park project. We don't have any additional planned phases at this point.
Okay, then, so I've been involved with this since really day one, at least from the PRAC standpoint, and I thought a play area was going in the day use area.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you for saying that. So I wasn't thinking of that as a phase, but there are other potential amenities that could be installed in the area. I think there's a master plan. Oftentimes we develop master plans that show a variety of potential, facilities or trails or, other opportunities. And, based on budget and capacity, we installed really what we could in this project. And if there could be in the future additional opportunities to add, more of those master plan features to the site.
Well, I would say the feedback, and this is also for the counselor if she's not in the meeting anymore, but PRAC, this body had strongly urged you through Oregon City staff to put that in phase one. So I'm very disappointed that it's not. I think we all recognize that playgrounds are pennies on the dollar when it comes to a park budget. And so I'm extremely disappointed, both as a PRAC member and a taxpayer, that wasn't included. And then going to the land swap thing, even in that meeting, some of our discussion was, sure, let's swap the land, but maybe they need to ensure that the park goes in, or that the play area goes in first. So I'm definitely disappointed about that.
And not to excuse it, I appreciate your directness. One of the things that we, like a lot of park systems right now, are struggling with is, kind of our ability to maintain. So Metro, one of our role in the region is to manage, natural experiences, and sometimes facilities like playgrounds and other things require more intensive maintenance right now than we can, sometimes afford or provide. So sometimes that's where we're struggling to make sure that when we put in or develop facilities, we can maintain them to safe and responsible standards. And so when we're looking at the resources that we have to both install these, and then there are the operational resources long-term, you know, even though we have money to do some of the capital work, our long-term operational capacity is still somewhat limited. So we're trying to work that out throughout the system. But that said, I appreciate your comments and thank you for your direct feedback.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I can respect that. The problem, though, is when you go to multiple public meetings and that play area is always at the forefront. You know, there's an expectation, and then really the only you know, if the project's 99% done, this is really the first time we heard that it wasn't going to be included. And so as the entire city of Oregon City has been looking forward to this, you know, the city residents don't care who owns the park, right? They don't care if it's a Metro Park or an Oregon City Park. They want to walk down the street and recreate, period. And so I think it's important to maintain the expectation.
Understood. Thank you for that feedback again. I appreciate it.
And my just a final comment, again, the rest of them know I'm direct as well. And I would just say that publicly, this is my own opinion and not PRAC's, but we have all often discussed this before. Oregon City has 38 parks, and dogs are allowed in all of those parks on leash. And one of the most common things we hear, and I've been on PRAC starting in late 2002, so quite a while, is that people want to recreate with their dogs. And I do not believe that Metro's policy on dogs is a one-size-fits-all policy is appropriate. And so same thing in this park. The upper area is not a natural area by any stretch of the imagination. And I think if people go there for a picnic, they should be allowed to have a dog on leash. If it's not appropriate down in a natural area, then it should be signed as such down there. And that's just my opinion. I'm taking the opportunity to provide that. So at that point, Troy, I'll yield back.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that. Karen? Karen, you're muted if you're talking.
Oops, I thought I had done, there we go. All right, I'm giving the distaff report. Sean has definitely been on PRAC longer than I have, but I want to commend you. We've watched this from the first concept, and this has moved much faster than I would have expected. I'm very impressed that you may be ready in October to open everything. I was never comfortable with the playground area, mainly because that public area is the one section that really abuts a cemetery. And a quieter space may be preferable, although, hey, laughing children are fun. But, and I'm in agreement with Metro over dogs. This is an incredible wildlife area. I grew up hanging out in the cemetery, and I know how much natural wildlife there is coming up out of that canyon. But those two aside, Dan, I wasn't really clear. Did you get an IGA on that property in place of a swap, or are we just kind of agreeing to agree with each other?
Thanks, Karen. The last update I had, and I apologize, I should have had one before I met with you all tonight, but the last update I had is that staff were working to finalize the IGA before the park was open. So that's my understanding, but I'd be happy to follow up with Kendall or anyone else after the meeting to make sure that that's still on that track. But that was my understanding based on the information that we had from Mr. Roberts at the time, was that we should pursue, the intergovernmental agreement, and that was the direction I gave to staff. And it was my understanding they were, still in that process.
Okay, because honestly, I supported letting you guys have it. That was originally supposed to be additional residential expansion, and that property is not appropriate for residential expansion. So, okay, and I have a completely off-topic question. I have never heard anybody from Metro mention that there was property on the east side of 213. Is part of that the old railway right-of-way?
You're right. It is part of the old railway right-of-way,
Yes.
and And it was purchased in part. I mean, there's always more than one purpose for a purchase. So it does have clear natural resource value, but it's also part of the Oregon City Loop Trail. So that's part of that regional trail ultimately that's planned. And it's intended, at least as currently conceptualized, to go through that area. So that's why some of those parcels were picked up.
Okay, I have several friends that so would like to turn that into a walking, well, okay, a walking trail, except where we don't have trestles anymore. But I'm glad to hear that. I'll look forward to hearing the development there. That's it.
Thanks for your
Karen.
feedback tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Karen. And Kendall, it seems like we have a couple of requests to get information on that piece of land that Oregon City has right there, and just kind of where we're at on that. If we could get some information on that, that would be helpful too. I've made a note of that as well. Andy, you've got some comments, questions.
I'm gonna let Brett go, but I just simply want to commend Metro. I've been working through Northwest Trail Alliance. I was trying to remember the very first meeting I went to was the North Walton Mountain meeting, where we brought in a couple hundred cyclists to that meeting, I think you recall correctly. But I was always told that government agency is going to take 10, 20 years, to get something done. And here we are 6, 7, 8 years later, and actually getting this. Actually, this is the first trail system. It's the first metro property, correct me if I'm wrong, first metro property that has allowed off-road cycling, if I recall. And so from a mountain biking organization standpoint, I'm very excited. And that's all I wanted to say. I want to commend all the Metro folks and everyone for doing a great job on this.
Thanks, Andy. And thanks for your partnership over the years too. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy. Brent.
Hey, Dan. Great presentation. Really excited about Newell Creek. It looks like a great area. 2 questions. Number one, with that October 2021 deadline to finish the project, how confident are you in that date?
I'm very confident. I mean, I hesitate to say that because, construction is always unpredictable. We have weather and other natural events that can slow things down. But I talked with my planning manager and the project manager this week, and they're feeling quite confident in that date. So I'd be surprised and extremely disappointed if we didn't meet that goal.
Okay. To Sean's point earlier, what I'm not clear on, is there a plan in place for additional amenities? And if yes, when is it? Or if not, no.
So right now, the best answer I have is that, like I said before, I don't have the master plan in front of me, but there is the nature play area, and there may have been, I just don't work, I've worked on a number of things right now, so I don't remember all the details of it, but there might have been some other, features that were identified in the plan that I'm not remembering. But that said, we are exhausting all funding that we have right now for this project to construct what we're putting in right now. So we will not have, when this is complete in October of 21, we'll have actually, invested a little bit more than we were initially planning, which is great because this is an important site. One of our earliest, the canyon itself was one of the earliest acquisitions with any of our bond money that we purchased over the years, and Shaw Spady and other community members, really advocated for the protection of this really amazing natural resource, in the beautiful community of Oregon City. And so, we're really happy to be able to install and invest what we have, but currently there isn't additional funding for anything else. That's not to say that at some point in the future there isn't, but there isn't a plan right now as we sit for any additional installations.
Okay, no, that answers my question. And then final question, regarding the cycle path, can you describe that a little bit? Is it just a dirt path, or is it like a pump track, like where new park that went in Portland?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it is a trail. The blue sections of that trail map that I showed you, they are built for off-road cycling. So to optimize the experience for cycling, they're not a pump track, but they do have features like banks. The trail itself is built to drain properly. It has transitions, up and down that create both cycling experience and, water drainage. There are meanders, things like that. So it's built at like a beginner intermediate level. So it's not a crazy, you're not going to get, extreme cyclists out there who want to, and it's short. But the nice thing about it is that it does create, and Andy might have other terms for this that you might use differently than I can, but just sort of a pop-in experience, when you're in urban areas and you want an off-road cycling experience, it's unlikely that you're going to find it maybe all at one place, but you can sometimes ride from place to place and pick up some different experiences. So we're really excited about this. Like Andy said, this is really the first trail that we've built on Metro property that really was built for cycling. We have other opportunities in some of our parks where you can ride bikes, but this is really built for off-road cycling. And so we worked with the Oregon City Trail Alliance, Northwest Trail Alliance, and others from the cycling community to, and also IMBA, International Mountain Biking Association, and other related contractors to be able to install this. So while not trying to oversell it, I think it's going to be both, a safe, family friendly cycling experience, but one that I think all riders in the community will be able to enjoy to some extent.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tim, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I did. Speaking of the east side of the Newell Canyon that really right now is separate, is there any future plans on connectivity from what we have now to across the highway?
There aren't any plans right now for that connection. I can't say it hasn't been discussed. There's a pretty amazing culvert, maybe you're aware of it, that goes under Highway 213 that connects both sides of those natural resources. We know that wildlife use it to travel back and forth, but right now there isn't any planned connection that I can think of at the moment between the two. Like I said, on that east side, it's really part of the Oregon City Loop Trail. And I can't recall if there is any part of that loop trail that touches Newell Canyon right now, the west side Newell Canyon off the top of my head, but that's what I know at the moment. I'd be happy to follow up, send Kendall some additional maps to look at that.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands. Are there any other questions? All right, well, we've got one task here that we'd like to follow up on with that piece of land for Oregon City. So we'll do that on our end. And then, Dan, one thing for you that I remember that came up, and I don't remember because it was about a couple of years ago, if that got shared with Metro or it was just a discussion amongst ourselves. Sean, your member's always really good about these sorts of things, so you may remember. But it came up about the hours, right? The open hours of the park. And, Metro, you always have your rules about how you operate, hours of operation for your parks. And of course, Oregon City, we have hours of operation for our parks. And we had expressed I don't know if I call it a concern, but an interest in somehow aligning those just to make it easy on our citizens, so that, because it can cause a lot of frustration when maybe, for example, and I don't know this to be true, but for example, all the parks in Oregon City are open at 10 o'clock, but one park gets closed at 9, right? Why is that one closed? And to Sean's point, they don't know who owns it. They don't care who owns it, but why is this one always closed early? Or maybe everyone's going to go to one park that's open late and now it's super crowded because it's the only one that's open late, right? It could be the other side. So I would just encourage some flexibility on that. And again, I'm not saying that you guys necessarily are tighter than we are. I don't even know that to be the case, but I think would also help law enforcement as they patrol, as they drive around, things like that, to have just consistency in some of those hours of operation and some of the procedures and things of how things are handled, just to make it easier on our citizens, less frustration, which of course, less frustration is always a good thing for everybody, cooler heads prevailing and all that kind of thing. If we can have some sort of dialogue with the powers that be, just to make everything easier for everybody within the community.
Thanks for that feedback. I don't know if I'd heard that. I'm not certainly the only person who's heard feedback from the Oregon City community, but I hadn't heard that. And that's a really interesting point. I definitely, we're in the process right now of talking about, and sort of starting to formalize our park operations. So we're moving from construction to operations. And if it works for you all, or if Kendall had thoughts, I'd love to connect our park operations group with OC Park Ops and to have, some coordination. We really try it, and you made so many good points, but one of them is that, as an operator within other communities, we really try to be good partners, we try to be good neighbors, we try to be good partners, and, consistency and connection. And like the point you make, I think many of you have made, is the community doesn't care what government agency operates this. It's a park, right? They want to experience it, and having consistency, both in terms of like openings and quality and other things like that, is so important. So we'll definitely connect on that.
I think it'll just be helpful for our community, and they don't care until there's a problem, right? Now all of a sudden, Metro closes their parks early. Now everyone doesn't like Metro, right? Or Metro's open late. Why can't Oregon City be like Metro? Metro does it right. Oregon City always does it wrong, right? So now all of a sudden they start knowing who it is, and now what they don't like becomes the bad guy, right? So I just think there can be a lot of benefit in just kind of some sort of coordination and some flexibility on maybe changing up some standard policies to make it work a little bit easier for everybody.
Thanks again for that.
Yep. Hey, Dan, thank you to your team. John, thank you as well for joining us and sharing with us tonight.
We certainly
having us
appreciate
this
the
evening.
opportunity. Oh, sorry, John, go
Appreciate
ahead.
it. I should say thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Great work, Dan, and thanks, Kendall, for calling us in, and for the committee. We really appreciate it. We'll take this feedback in.
Thanks all.
Thank you. So Officer Haynes is with us, and Officer Haynes, thank you very much for patiently listening and being with us.
Of course, no
And,
problem. You guys can hear me all right?
Yep, we can totally hear you.
Awesome,
He's here
thank you.
to speak to us about the homeless situation in Oregon City. We had last meeting, we had expressed an interest in, because this is the Parks and Rec, so I know you deal, Officer Haynes, with a lot with the homeless, but specifically we had how it affects the parks, right? The parks piece. After hours, that's typically where they're going to go, right?
Definitely.
So I'm going to turn it over to you as a liaison and tell us what you got.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kendall, for the invitation to the meeting tonight. Just a little background on me. I've been with the Oregon City Police Department for about 14 years now. Been with the Homeless Liaison Officer Program for about a year. So I'm going to do now, I have a little presentation, just a couple slides, just kind of talk to you guys about it. Can you guys see that okay?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. Let me go back here. Okay, so homelessness in Oregon City. Like I said, that's me. I'm the Homeless Liaison Officer, Dan Haynes. My computer is, of course, running super slow. The homeless crisis is a growing concern in the city of Oregon City, as you all know. The city has seen an increase in the homeless population, as well as an increase in the minor crimes and neighborhood nuisances associated with a large homeless population that we are seeing. Because of this, the Oregon City Police Department assigned a sworn officer as a homeless liaison officer, which is, first it was Officer Mike Day, and then fortunately I was able to put in and got it. The homeless liaison officer position works closely with code enforcement for the city, homeless outreach programs, city officials, and the homeless population to try and help with the homeless crisis in Oregon City. The HLO, which is also the homeless liaison officer, we just say HLO, it's just easier to say, works as a liaison officer between the city and the homeless population to try and provide them with resources, as well as enforce ordinance violations and laws. I also work closely with a cleanup crew, and the city contracts them to restore the areas that are affected by the trash that are left behind. Here's some stats for you guys that I pulled. So from April 2020 to January 15th, 2021, the homeless liaison officer, along with the homeless advocate, Kevin Dahlgren, and in partnership with Father's Heart, which is, if you guys don't know, Father's Heart is a ministry that is at 12th and Washington, and they help out with the homeless population, giving them food, and now we're starting to work with them to get them shelter. And between those months, we've housed 77 people. So 34 of those accepted shelters, 21 accepted transitional housing. Transitional housing is like, we've been using hotels. What we do is we will put in someone into a hotel for about 60 days. And in that time, we will connect them with case managers to get them full-time housing. 15 were assisted in getting back to their families. And then 7 are now on their own apartments or housing. The problem is that we're still having issues with the chronic homeless, and 90% of them are they just don't want any services at all. They just want to be left alone and just keep being homeless. So that's a struggle that I'm seeing. Here's some before and after photos. So what happens is I will contact someone who's houseless, out in the streets, in the woods, offer them some shelter. If they do accept it, I will provide them with a shelter or the proper, connect them with the proper case managers. And then that time I give them, so it's technically 24 hours I have to give them, but I usually give them a little longer to get their personal belongings and move out of that area. And there's just some areas here. This is the 99 walkway there. We have a lot of issues there, and I'd like to try to keep that clean. This is close to the railroad, as you can see. So I contact individuals, tell them, I provide them with shelters and connect them with housing and such, and they'll leave, and then we'll contract with our cleanup crews and come and clean everything up. There's a couple more pictures. I think our cleaning crew just does a great job with restoring the areas. So right now, I'm just going to open up for any questions that you guys might have.
Brent.
Hey, Officer Haynes, thank you very much. And first and foremost, thank you for your service. Greatly appreciated. Read about some of your success stories in trail news as well. So really glad to see this. My question to you is regarding people who do want service. When it comes to putting them in temporary housing or transitional housing, is it limited only to Oregon City, or are other communities involved with that?
So we're trying just to keep focusing just on the city of Oregon City. I know that we have a lot of people who come in from outside cities who go to Father's Heart, and in turn, the directors and the people that work at Father's Heart help with those people too. But my main focus is to help the houseless inside the city of Oregon City.
Okay.
That's kind of our main goal.
Has Providence Health and Services ever been a part of any help in any of this?
No, I haven't. We haven't really been in contact with them regarding anything.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy.
Thank you. Thank you for showing up or coming tonight, and appreciate everything that you guys do. It's definitely not a easy job, but appreciate that.
Thank you.
Maybe it's not appropriate for this, if it isn't. I mean, I'm more from the curiosity of, you have people that you obviously are helping and whatnot. There's people who don't. What are the general reasons for the people who don't? Is it addiction? Is it anti-law?
That's a hard question. It's an array of stuff. A lot of it's mental health. A lot of it, they just don't trust the system.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is just, they just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
They kind of just want to be that loner type. They don't like to interact with people. They don't so what we try to do, so what I do, I'm compassionate but firm. So I will show each individual compassion, but I also be firm with them, which is I won't give them handouts. A lot of times I will contact these individuals. They have to work in order to get housing. They have to do the job. They have to try to become clean and sober. They have to get on the right mental health program to try to get right back on the mental health meds. So a lot of times they just don't want to go do that stuff. So that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
John?
Either Officer Haynes, first, like has already been said, I really appreciate what you and the rest of the guys and gals at the police department do. We're 100% support of you. Really, my only question relates to parks, just because of this board and what our focus is. Can you talk a little bit about the homeless impacts you see on public park property, and are there nuisance areas? Are they shifting? We've heard other issues where it's been described kind of whack-a-mole. They move from one park to the next. So just kind of, if you can, kind of narrow it down into the park side.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, but that's a perfect example. It is like whack-a-mole. So the good thing about parks is, though, we have the park rules and regulations. So once a park closes at 10 or 9, as you were saying, sometimes we can go and enforce those rules. And so that's what's really good with the park rules. That really helps us on that. I think I've had issues in Kenema Park just because it's so dark at night, and even during the day. It's really wooded. So we're having issues underneath the Gladstone Oregon City Bridge that connects to Clackamas Park. The problem with that is it comes down to jurisdiction issues. Believe it or not, that area right there is Oregon Department of Transportation. And at this moment, the City of Oregon City Police Department cannot go and trespass anyone from there. That's because it's the Department of Transportation's property. That's the same as Metro. When Dan was talking earlier, it's kind of funny. They'll go on private property. We'll send the private property a letter from code enforcement saying, hey, you have campers on your property. So what they will do is move 5 feet over in a Metro and plant there. And I can't do anything about it. And Metro's so overwhelmed with Highway 213 and the issues with homeless down there that and then with just everything else in the Metro area, it's just difficult for me to enforce a lot of things when my hands are tied. That's the problem. But as for the parks, though, I got a really good relationship with John Waverly, and he calls me all the time, and he's got his workers who literally will dial my work phone and say, hey, I got this camper here, just showed up overnight. Can you come and talk to him? So usually we'll go over there and talk to them, and they'll usually move along within a couple hours.
Great. Thank you for the information. I guess my only final question is, do you have a rough idea of how many homeless are within the City of Oregon City, like tonight?
So that's the last count we had was, I believe, was 300, but that was back in 2016, 17. The problem we're seeing is we have a lot of transplants from other cities, but they'll just come for the day to go use the day shelter, Father's Heart, and then they'll leave. So to the public eye during the day, it looks like there's a lot of homeless that are residing in Oregon City. That's not necessarily true. They're just coming in to get their services during the day for the day shelter, and then they're leaving. Okay. So I'm going to say roughly right now about 100 that I know. So
great. Well, thank you.
Tim.
Officer Dan, I think that you have one of the toughest jobs in the Oregon City Fire Department, or the police department.
Yeah.
I think that this is similar to squeezing a water balloon, okay? It just goes somewhere else. And this is really tough. I could really appreciate your opinion, your situation. There are a couple of big areas, or visible areas, I should say, that like Clackamas Park in the top of Newell Canyon right there. And those are both within the Oregon City boundaries. I know that really affects our park goers. Probably the Newell or the Clackamas Park is where a good portion of Oregon City's daily park users walk through and see this kind of stuff. And then Newell Canyon, not yet, but as soon as those trails are open, we're going to go ahead and have a lot of feedback, public feedback, because the trash and stuff is so visible. And even if it is on private property, as the Metro guy just said, it's visible. And it's something that is a situation for all of Oregon City's citizens. And I was just wondering, what kind of impact are you going to have in these visible areas? It sounds like under 205 bridge, it's not part of yours, although everybody sees it every time you get on the highway. But how about just these two areas, the Clackamas Park and Newell Canyon?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's like Sean was saying earlier regarding the parks. No one cares who owns the areas. You know, no one cares about whose jurisdiction it is. They just want it cleaned up.
Yep.
And that's hard for me because the Clackamas Park, I'm not seeing a lot inside the park per se, campers. What I'm seeing is I've done a lot of cleanups over where the River Resource Museum is, you know, closer to the cove and along the peninsula there. I usually walk that maybe once or twice a week to make sure that no campers are setting up. As for the Newell Canyon, that's a really weird area. It's there's about 4 jurisdictions along 213. It's Metro, Clackamas Sheriff's Department, Oregon Department of Transportation, and the City of Oregon City. The City of Oregon City is the smallest jurisdictions within the Newell Creek Canyon, but most of it is Metro. And right now, because I have close contact with Metro agencies, they're not moving people. They're just kind of giving them trash bags and cleaning up their mess. But because of the pandemic and stuff, they're just not moving people. That's the same as Oregon Department of Transportation. So it's one of those things where I want to help clean it up and I want to help those people getting them housing, but that's out of my jurisdiction and I can't do anything about it, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Karen.
Hi, okay, Dan, I had a question. I know we increased cold weather beds. How well did that do?
Well, the pandemic had a really big impact on that. Father's Heart last year, they were able to, I'm going to say, have 50 beds. Then this year, during the pandemic, they were only allowed to have 13, just because of the space. But I contracted out with other cities and was able to get shelters throughout the Milwaukee area and other areas who had larger spaces. So we were able to place people into those cold shelters as well as into temporary housing, such as motels.
Okay, thank you.
Andy?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up question. You know, something you made a comment earlier about one thing good about parks rules is that we have operational hours and you can remove citizens and people from it. Are there other things that possibly Oregon City could do that could minimize, you know, the homeless population or, you know, some of these issues?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, we do have a camping ordinance which helps us. The thing about the camping ordinance is, though, they have 24 hours within to move. So if someone's camped out in a city property, I will contact them, offer them shelter. If they refuse, I will post their camp and say you have 24 hours to move. So after 24 hours, they have to be gone because I'll have a cleanup crew right behind me. The thing with parks rules is once it's 10 o'clock, that's it. Like, you have to go now. It's pretty much like if someone's on private property for trespassing, like, you're on my porch, you need to leave now, and if you don't, you'll be arrested. But that's kind of how it is.
Are there things that we could do in the future to help minimize these things?
I just get the community on board, and if they see someone maybe setting up camp or something, to call it in. I'll try to get there and offer services as fast as possible. The problem that we see is if someone establishes their camp, the bigger it's going to be, the more cleanup and the harder it is that's going to be to move them. So that's why I like to walk the areas that I've cleaned already, because if I can get a jump on people setting up, then it's not as hard to move them.
Yeah, thanks.
Anybody else? So I have a couple of questions. We talk about park rules, or not park rules, the camping rules. How tough are some of those to get changed so they're more of an advantage that you can work with?
So there is a Ninth Circuit of Appeals. It's called the Boise ruling. What had happened is Boise, Idaho got into some hot water with arresting houseless people for camping out in the streets. So the verbiage is super long, but pretty much it's very hard to move someone who had set up camp in cities. So it's a very fine line that we have to do. That's why I take the time in trying to contact these people, getting a rapport, and then literally trying to do that 24 hours on the dot notice. That's kind of the ruling, is you have to give them 24 hours to leave, and you have to offer them shelter.
And you're saying it's really hard to really get that changed.
Correct.
Now I know we don't have the resources to expand our jurisdiction or to do anyone else's job. At the same time, a lot of that stuff down by the cove, underneath the bridge, that affects us more than it affects Oregon Department of Transportation, right?
Correct.
They're not living here, we're living here. And so while I'm not going to suggest that we, help them do their job or lend our officers to them or anything like that, would it be reasonable or possible to have some sort of an understanding or an agreement that if you see people on their property, that you have permission from them to remove them? Like, because for me, I'll tell you, if you walk by my house and someone's on my porch, I will tell you have permission to remove them. Like, you don't have to just keep walking and turn a blind eye. You're welcome to always remove them, right? Like, if you just had permission, kind of a standing order, could you do that rather than walk away and say, well, it's not my jurisdiction, I can't take care of it? Is that possible within law enforcement? Is that something you guys can do?
It is, and we're in the works of getting that done. We've been talking with Oregon Department of Transportation for the past, I'm going to say about a year now, of trying to get something in writing. There's a lot of legality paperwork that they have to go through and give to us. So we're going to start. We're getting the ball rolling, and we're going to start. They're going to be able to move. Assist with them of helping those campers get out of there.
Because that, I think, would help empower you a little bit. Now, if you've got someone like Metro who says, no, we want you to leave them alone because we just want to hand them garbage bags and we don't want you to bother them. If they're on our property, leave them alone. Well, then there's not much you can do there.
Correct. That's how Oregon Department of Transportation is now because of the pandemic. But like I said, we're getting a GO signed. We're getting some paperwork done, and hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll be able to enforce the trespassing rules over there.
Okay. And then the last question I have is Father's Heart. The problem I've always had, or that I've seen with that type of an establishment, is these people that use those facilities and use those resources don't then have the ability to jump on a bus and go to a different town and, you know, go sleep somewhere else, right? If they did, they're not going to come to Oregon City to get a hot meal during the day and then get the bus to go sleep somewhere at night. So clearly when they leave there during the day, they're sleeping here in Oregon City because they're not getting, they can't sleep there. So it makes sense to me, the math adds up that they've got to sleep right here in our community. And are you finding that to actually be the case, to where after hours, that's who you're having to remove from the parks?
Yes. It's funny because when I got this position, I was approached by multiple homeless people who I've arrested in the past. And they said, even though you've arrested me so many times, I think you're the best for the position because the way you treat us. So a lot of times I'm seeing the same faces who are going to Father's Heart and also sleeping in the city. I try to know the population pretty well. And the ones that I'm seeing during the day at Father's Heart they're literally getting on a bus and leaving. We've also coordinated with Father's Heart and kind of got there was a lot of back and forth between them and us because they want to help. I get that, but we are trying to say, if you want to help these people, how you can really help them is get them housing, not just hand them tents and sleeping bags to sleep outside. The main goal is to get them into a shelter, into some housing. So a lot of that too is working with them on informing Father's Heart, hey, we've had John Doe over here causing this many issues inside the city, but he's going to Father's Heart and he's an angel. That's not really what's going on. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll put them on kind of a probation period. And they've been handing out letters to the homeless community saying, if you're not a good, upstanding community member in the city of Oregon City, we will not supply any stuff for you. So it just goes to show you that Father's Heart's working with the city and also with the police department to saying, hey, what your actions outside this building and in the city is not right, and we're not going to continue offering resources to you if you're going to cause an issue in the city. So I think that's really getting established, and a lot of these homeless population are starting to know that.
Good. Okay. Well, Officer Haynes, thank you very, very much for sharing with us and for being here. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
everybody. I appreciate that. Let me just throw something on real quick.
Okay.
If you guys have any questions. That's me right there. That's my work phone number. Best thing to get a hold of me though is my email, because my voicemail fills up quick and I might be busy on the phone, so I might not be able to answer, or busy on a call. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to call. I work Tuesday through Friday from 7 to 5. The next 5 weeks though, I'm training a new officer who we just hired. And so I'm a field training officer. So I'm doing that. That's my main focus right now. And I'm trying to work also as a liaison officer. But right now, for about 5 weeks, I'm going to be training this new officer. So, but don't hesitate to give me a call or send me a message or email.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Troy, I
Yeah.
put my hand back up. It's Karen.
Okay, Karen, you got a question
Dan?
for Officer Haynes?
Yes,
No,
Karen.
actually, I have kudos for Dan.
Okay,
32 years parole and probation. I worked with Father's Heart when they started out in Clackamas. And congratulations, the closer you can work with them, they do cooperate, and oh boy, do I know the people that don't want help, don't want to be around other people. This job is a hard job, and thank you so much for doing it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I take a lot of pride too with the relationship I've had with Father's Heart. Both directors, we just get along. We're a good team. We're a good partnership. So it's right now we're trying our best to help out everyone.
thank you very much, Officer.
All right, thank you guys.
So Rochelle Parsh, Aquatics Director, is going to update us with the cost recovery analysis.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to provide an update on our park and recreation cost recovery work that we've been doing since October. And I have a PowerPoint I'm going to take an opportunity to share with you all. Give me a moment. Okay. Okay. So let's see if this is working. All right, so tonight's presentation is going to cover several items. We're going to talk about the overall timeline that we have spent on cost recovery. I'll go over a refresher really quick of what is cost recovery and why did our department do the work? What was our phased approach to our cost recovery? And then a discussion of the data and the resulting software that we used. And then we're going to talk about next steps. So we started our work in October of 2020, and we entered into a contract with 110% Amelia Consulting. We conducted phase 1, which was the staff and education training, and I'll go in these a little bit detail here in a second. Phase 2 was service category development. Phase 3 was our cost of service analysis. Phase 4 is our beneficiary of services workshop. Phase 5 was we unveiled the cost recovery tool and the service category analysis. And then tonight, we're here presenting to PRAC. And then hopefully our future agenda items are going to be bringing a draft policy back to PRAC for discussion, and then eventually to commission to codify our cost recovery tool. All right, so a quick refresher, what is cost recovery and why did our department decide to venture down this road? So cost recovery is the degree to which the cost, direct and indirect, of facility services and program is supported or paid for by user fees and or other designated funding mechanisms, such as grants, partnerships, etc., versus the use of tax subsidies. Why did our department find this was important? 1, it helps set up long-term financial resilience, strength, and vitality. 2, it analyzed our current subsidy levels. 3, it transparently communicates to the community and staff about our true costs. 4, it removes the uncertainty of arbitrarily setting fees. And 5, it establishes a methodology that helps us meet our subsidy goals. So phased approach to cost recovery. So our step 1 was to create the Oregon cohort. So part of what this approach was, so we worked alongside of 3 other agencies. Those agencies were Westland, Lake Oswego, Ashland, and then of course, Oregon City. Step 2, we contracted with Amelia Consulting, and step 3, we started our department's cost recovery work in October of 2020. Then we entered into phase 1 and we developed our project team. And our project team was Kendall, Denise, myself, Melissa Tierney, Kathy, Jessica, John, and Ginny. And we went through initial training. We conducted a department-wide cost recovery staff and training. So everybody met to learn the language of cost recovery and where we were heading. Phase 2, the project team developed our service categories. And just as a reminder, the service categories were that list of service categories that we used later on in our beneficiary of services. But as a reminder, Here's the list. Unless you want me to read them, but they're all right there. And that's just a reminder of how we developed our service categories. So again, all of the department services, we can apply to any one of these service categories. Phase 3, we did a cost of service analysis. And this was the heavy lift of the process. This is where the team did a data collection. We learned how to use a cost recovery software. So along with this consulting firm, there was also a cost recovery software. And further in this slide deck, I'll show you snippets of what this software looks like and how we're going to be able to utilize it to help us move forward with cost recovery. We organized our indirect costs and facility costs. And then phase 4, we did our beneficiary of services category workshop. And that was, if you all remember, it was the joint work session that we did with commission where we ranked the service categories in common good versus individualized benefit. We all got to hold up I think it was our fingers to rank them. And we also had a section of it where we involved staff and the public, which also participated in the ranking of the service categories. So I believe in total, we had close to 35 to 40 people help us rank our service categories based on, again, common good versus individualized benefit. Here was the results of our beneficiary of services exercise. So you can see is on the bottom left, it starts with inclusion and it works all the way up to the continuum. The highest is merchandise. Now what this continuum represents is common good is towards the bottom left. As you go up the continuum, you can see that the services that we provide are more individualized. Common good being essential community-wide interests, far-reaching impact, universal value, and access for all. And an individualized service is discretionary, self-interest, limited impact, exclusive, and access for some. That was the result of our tallies. Then we entered phase 5, which we just a couple of weeks ago reached our phase 5. This is where we unveiled the cost recovery tool. So we took all of our data and we put it in this software. And then we also received something called an insight report. So our consultant took all of our data, put it into an Excel spreadsheet, uploaded it into our software, and we received the results of that insight report. The important thing with this insight report is we used our actual data to identify where we're currently at, and it helped assist us in setting our targets for future cost recovery or subsidy levels. So here's a snippet of what our insight report looks like. And I know some of the group, last time we spoke or I did an update, there was some excitement around the data. So here's an example of what some of the data looked like. Now you can see that I'm using drop-in access as our service category for an example. And our current cost recovery is at about 13%. Our max is at 125% and our median fell about 12%. So there's about, let's see, I think there's like 36 different categories or 36 different areas that you can look at, but this is just a snippet of one of the pieces of data that we used moving forward in this process. So they took that data and they put it in our software. This is an example of the dashboard of the software. So it's in a graph form. So if we use the drop-in access right here as an example, you can see that you have our actual in this lighter purple and our target is in this darker purple. And you can see here that there's a little bit of room to grow here if we want to reach our target. Then you have certain categories like our specialized services. Oh, sorry, you guys, that somehow I switched the screen early. But you can see how the dashboard, the cool part about the software is that you can click into any one of those graphs and you can make a piece of the pie of that service category. So again, using the drop-in access as an example, you can see here that our whole piece of the pie drop-in access includes aquatics, pioneer, and recreation. And it breaks the data down. So you can see our net revenue and then our cost recovery, what the percentage is. And the exciting part about it is the software gets even more powerful and it can break the pie down into further pieces. So now here we can see drop-in access specifically just for aquatics. You can look at our memberships, our punch cards, our daily admission. So the next step, once we received all this information, was for the project team to meet, and we met several different times to discuss setting our targets. And this is, again, we use the insight reports and our true data analysis. We submitted our project team subsidy targets to the consultant team for review, and then we conducted additional training on the cost recovery and software. This is our final product, and we call it the Financial Support and Sustainability Strategy. This is our continuum, and I know that's extremely hard to see, so I put the continuum information on the next slide here so you can see our continuum goes from common good to individualized. This is our subsidy targets, and these are our target cost recovery. And all this information ended up on our final draft of our financial support and sustainability strategy. And again, we developed these numbers based off of the insight report. And the thing to note about this is a target, and some of these are excitingly ambitious targets. And one of the things that we've talked about as a project team is how do you incrementally reach these targets? And what this does help us do is paint a picture of where we're currently at and provides us a goal to get to eventually, and to be essentially how we named our tool, more strategic and allowing the department to be more sustainable financially. So next steps, we're going to create a draft financial support and sustainability strategy policy. We will bring that draft policy to PRAC for updates and comments. We'll incorporate the comments into draft policy. We'll bring those draft policy back to the commission work session where they'll provide comments in the draft policy. Then we'll bring a resolution to the city commission that codifies the financial support sustainability strategy policy. The goal is for this policy to become effective July 1st of 2021. And I'd like to open it up for questions if that's the conclusion of my report and update. So looking forward to answering any questions you might have.
Andy, let's start with you. Maybe the questions for Rochelle?
Thanks. This is actually really, really great. I'm actually excited to see this. What I'm really kind of curious is the bottom line is how have we gotten to the point where do we feel like how this is going to affect the budget for Oregon City Parks and Rec?
Yeah, and I think, well, Kendall, do you want to field that or do you?
Sure, I can fill that one. So something that we're looking at going into budget season as we're preparing for our budgets is we're realizing that one of the things that we're going to have to do once we go to the commission and we get this approved is we're going to have to develop a communication plan about some of the changes that will be coming because we don't want to make any drastic changes in our pricing model. We want to educate people on the why and what we're doing and get buy-in and get feedback so people can prepare. And like Rochelle said, we want this to be a gradual process. And this is going to be something ongoing that we're going to continue to evaluate. The other thing is the first year in the biennium, we are realizing with COVID restrictions, we really don't know where we're going to land in regards to our revenues. We don't know if people are going to immediately come back and return. There's some facilities that are currently still not open, when they'll be allowed to open, what programs and services will be allowed to offer, what programs and services people will feel comfortable coming back to. So we're under the impression that it's going to take some time that first year to get back in the swing of things and get back to where we were. So what we're saying is in that second year of the biennium, we should start to see our numbers go back up, and we should have time to communicate some of these changes and make some of the adjustments to our fees and start seeing some of the impact from some of this work that we're doing with cost recovery.
I would imagine that you've at least done some analysis. If we didn't have, if we looked at previous years, if we had applied these concepts to it, how much that would change.
We have looked at specific areas where there's a dramatic difference. For instance, with our sports field reservations, right now we charge little to nothing for those. So we know that if we start charging a fee, there's going to be a dramatic increase in the amount of revenue that we can recoup from our sports field reservations. But at the same time, we understand that it's going to take some time for us to get there. Yeah. We know where we are in regards to what we're recovering right now and how much revenue we're bringing in right now. And we will be able to set some goals year over year in regards to where we want to be. But in the grand scheme of things, an actual number for all of the programs, we don't have that information as of right now.
Yeah, well, it's hard to determine, but it's a good process. At least it's a good starting point moving forward. That's for sure. So,
and Andy, I'd like to add real quick too. The one thing that this did do for us that painted a picture immediately was how expensive or what our direct and indirect costs for some of our services actually are. And that's another approach to being more sustainable as far as, are there ways to do things more efficiently on our expense side? And so that was some real data that we've been able to look at and actually see immediately. And so that's been extremely helpful.
Yeah. Thanks, appreciate it.
Karen.
Rochelle and Kendall, thank you for the number crunching. I was surprised when I was doing my homework for the meeting that all I had was a staff report. Can we get this PowerPoint so that we can give it a little more thought and review?
Yeah, absolutely.
I can get that out to everyone.
Thank you. And again, congratulations, guys.
Tim, you got some questions?
I do. I have a couple. Number one is, Rochelle, you and Kathy do a tremendous job and doing all sorts of things to get people active in Oregon City, and I think that's great. And you run a fine line in between charging to make things sustainable versus, prohibitively expensive for the general person to entertain themselves or to recreate and to do all these activities. So looking at that, I mean, there's things that you want to charge for and those things that you want to go ahead and attract people to. What are the top 3 activities that earn income for our park system? That's one question.
Kendall, do you want to take that, or do you want?
You can take that one.
Okay. So specifically speaking about the park system, one of the things that we identified, so looking at, hopefully, and stop me if I'm not answering your question exactly, but if I understand it, you want to know what in our park system would actually be a revenue generator?
No, in your report that you just gave, I mean, it's all about cost recovery. Yep, this is great. Some things recover costs a heck of a lot easier and more so than others. So,
well, we can use Kathy, for example. She has a really, really robust human services program. And when we crunched her numbers, she was close to 30% cost recovery because of how well she manages the Clackamas County contract. And so that's a way that we're bringing in money that's essentially subsidized from the county contract. The other areas that we realized brought in some higher cost recovery would be some of our drop-in fees, for example. Aquatics charges for when people come to public swim. And that was another area. And the one area that we actually are lining up currently with our target is our skill-based beginner activities. And that would be like our swim lesson programs. And so we're relatively close to where we need to be as far as revenue expense in that specific service category.
Very good.
Yeah.
I forgot my second question. So that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Cool.
Brent.
Hey, Rochelle, thank you very much. I'm really excited about this. I think it's pretty cool. I love how it paints a picture for you with all the data and everything. Can you go back a couple of slides to where there were 3 columns and the middle column was subsidy and then the revenue amount? I think, yeah, that one.
This one here?
Yep. Can you help me to understand the subsidy column and its effect on the target cost recovery?
So it's working the math backwards. So one is exactly the same as the other. So when we're talking about subsidy, we're speaking to the taxpayer that we're going to subsidize open access at 95 to 100%.
Okay.
So when someone visits our parks, we're fully aware that we're going to cover that close to 100%. So our target cost recovery is really internal speak. That's whereas when I'm making a program or I'm looking at something, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to try to recover 0 to 5% of my cost recovery.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions? So I have a question. This is all software driven, you know, you put in the data and it kind of generates some numbers. And so that to me anyway speaks that this is a dynamic system where it continually moves with the data that's provided. So is this, does this sync with maybe some accounting software or other system that we have? And so these numbers on maybe a minute to minute or even a daily basis are always being filled. So this is something that those that need to see it can see it all the time? Or is this something that you have to enter in and then you'll evaluate it once a month or once a quarter or however?
Mm-hmm. So the answer, the short answer is no. It's an annual evaluation, and the data, once it's put into this cost recovery software, is easier to update. And part of, if we continue to use this software as a department, part of what our monthly fee includes is access to the individuals where we send all of our data and they upload it for us.
Mm.
Now, the second part of your question is there is a piece of software out there that this is a module of, and there is some abilities to have our, it would be switching different software, and that's a larger and different conversation. So, but for now, the answer is no. And we're hoping to take a look at this annually with the assistance of the data people that come along with the software.
So then, I guess I don't even know how to ask this question. At what point or how does, there's a lot of subjectivity when you're messing with dollars, right? When you're messing with fees, right? I mean, just even when you've given us reports in years past, when you've come to in front of us about raising fees at the pool, right? You want to raise it a quarter, you want to raise it 75 cents. I mean, there's always that risk of it. You look at your past attendance, and if it remained the same, or if you continue with the same growth, you know what that math is gonna be. At the same time, the increase in fees could create a drop in attendance, right? Because it becomes cost prohibitive for people. And that's where it becomes subjective of how much do we raise the fee or how much do we not, right? Or the park rental. If I raise my fee to try to recover the cost, to try to increase that cost recovery, well, now people, if it becomes cost prohibitive, then I've kind of, shot myself in the foot here, and I actually didn't recover anything because now nobody's renting my parks because I'm just charging too much for it, right? Mm-hmm. So at what point in the system do you take a look at adjusting things? Because, to just kind of tweak it a little bit and try to recover more at the same time, being fair to the community and still providing what we're designed to provide, which is good service at a low cost.
Yeah, and that's to what Kendall had mentioned earlier about how this will be incremental. And we, because those are really good thoughts and questions, and all questions that the project team has discussed. And we just got done today, the cohort met, and we did this post-cohort huddle, and we talked about regional market comparisons. And we spoke about how you know, Ashland is a little bit different because they're down south, but what can the market bear? What can the community bear? Because the community is completely different. I would argue that ours would be different than like Oswego and West Lynn. And so it'll be done thoughtfully, incrementally, and there'll be metrics with which that will be incorporated into the policy that will tell us, are we succeeding at what our goals are? And if programs maybe aren't succeeding, or there's ways to be a little bit more strategic, we'll have a policy to fall back on. So are we identifying those metrics or meeting those metrics? And there's some programs, for example, I had a conversation with Melissa today, and we're talking about doing potentially an Easter egg hunt, because with the county being in moderate level, we're excited to do COVID safe programs again. And my conversation with her was, let's apply it to the cost recovery software. Let's put in our direct and indirect costs. What's it going to look like as far as a cost per resident? And then we'll have a really good idea. Are we meeting our target cost recovery? And is it a reasonable fee? So I think that's the power of the tool. And I hear you, Troy. That's definitely a conversation we've been having and would be mindful about in our approach.
And I guess that's a question I had, but really didn't ask, is it a dynamic piece to where you can kind of enter information and get a result rather than throw a dart at the wall and at the end of the year say, is that what it did for me, right? Like you can actually use it for a tool rather than just an evaluation at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you can, and I like that.
Yeah, and the piece I'm really excited for too is the draft policy. I've been studying some cost recovery policies that other agencies have provided as examples. And there's some really, really great metrics that will be a guiding light essentially for the department. So it's that'll be a really fun next part of this process.
Good. Thank you very much. Karen, did you put your hand up again, or is it just, you just never took it down?
Yeah, me again.
Okay. All right,
So,
go ahead.
Rochelle, within the software, is there anywhere where it suggests to you that you might want to focus scholarship funds, or give you an idea on where you may need to increase scholarship funds? I'm all for self-paid, but I realize that we have people that can't self-pay, and I know you have a wonderful scholarship program.
Mm-hmm. That I would say and argue that probably goes under our inclusion category, that we're making a statement as a department that it doesn't matter race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, that everyone will have access, mental and physical ability differences, everyone will have access to our programs. And the good thing is we're really, really working on our donation side of our scholarships. And in fact, we just entered into a agreement, if you will, with the Oregon City Parks Foundation. And they're writing a grant that will help fund youth camp scholarships for the summer. So we're really reaching out to those community partners that are going to help us fundraise, and we're gonna stick it under that inclusion category, because again, I think as a value, everybody should be included, and that donation scholarship side of it will make that so it's possible.
Okay, thank you, because I knew that was one of your focuses.
Yes, yeah.
Rochelle, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Let's move on to our goals. Our PRAC goals. Kendall, did you get the email that I sent you just before the meeting?
Can you guys see this?
There you go.
Okay. Are you able to see this?
Cost recovery update still?
Oh, sorry. Let me put it over here. Is that better?
Yep. There we go. So this was the format, and I apologize, this was, I got this to Kendall late, because I noticed that the other one came out, and I noticed it late. This was the format we had put together. And Tim, you're probably the only one that didn't see this at some point in your life. The rest of us have seen this. And as I told Kendall, I don't remember when we actually voted. In fact, Sean, maybe you didn't see this either, but you've seen a copy at some point. But I don't remember exactly when we voted on this. But I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, I think we can all agree we did vote on this to enter this in. I just don't remember if it was February or March of last year. And this was the format that I had reworked to turn our goals into kind of SMART goals, measurable goals. So this is the format we'll work off of for tonight. And if we need some more time, we can take some more time, but I don't want to take too much time because, you know, if we wait a month between every discussion and we have 3 or 4 discussions, then we're really kicking this can down the road way too far. So if we want to take a quick look at the screen here, and, you know, I really don't want to, I don't think we need to go down every single one of these. I think it would get too long of a discussion to hash it out every single one, but feel free to just take a look at these and we'll open up the discussion for any questions. There is a second page, but let's go ahead and just stick to page 1 for now, and then we'll flip through and go ahead and look through those. The idea here is that we have a goal, and we didn't do a great job last year of periodically reviewing these. We need to do better with that this year. And so the idea of the second column is updates and notes, that we would continually keep these throughout. And then the measure of success, that was what we had all determined we were going to use as how we would measure how we were doing along the way. And then if they got completed, we would mark the date of completion. So as we read through these, the idea is we can keep them, we can revise them, or we can drop them, and then we can bring on some new ones if we feel we need to.
Troy, can you expand the size of that document on this screen so we could read it? Thank you.
Okay, Troy, I'm not even going to play hands.
You might want to unmute, Karen.
Sorry, this was not part of the packet. The packet was enough. We went through a year of trying to recover. Don did some wonderful things for us, straightened things out. And then we have gone into Kendall, and Kendall is doing an incredible job, but he's got a deep job. And, honestly, as I was going through what was in the packet, we had left deferred maintenance and park infrastructure as needing citizen input committees or meetings. We had left the Clackamas Park master plan and the boat ramp with the city commission at a stakeholders meeting, talking to fishermen, whatever, who is this going to affect? Let's see, I had another one. There were, the Parks and Recreation System Master Plan required a consultant. Those are 3 projects that require a consultant. And, oops, I've got all my notes here and now I'm missing a note. But things have changed. Things need to be updated. I don't think this is, identify funding and begin construction of Tyrone S. Woods. I think we need some kind of interactive document where we can put up ideas and input. And I think Kendall needs to let us know where we are on the budget, because the upper yard, And yes, this was the 2019-2021 goals, which was an old board. But the upper yard issue, we still haven't heard what condition it's going to be in and what the Parks and Recreation Department is going to be responsible for, or what Public Works will have to be responsible for. I don't think we're at a place right now that we can really update this and address it. Signing off.
Okay, I'm going to chime in on that. I think these are goals, right? And goals need to be continually updated. So I confidently disagree. I agree with you that there is some information that we could gather here, that there is some updating needs to be done, and I completely agree with that. However, these are goals. And so what we can do is take the information we know, and clearly we've moved along on the Tyrone S. Woods piece. So if we need to take that completely off the list because we don't need to make it a goal because it's well underway and just about done, we can take it off. If we want to reword it to include, finishing it, doing the grand opening or something like that, we can reword it to include something like that. But we're definitely in a position where we can rework these goals, as we should really be doing every month or maybe every other month, because they're goals. Any other thoughts from anybody else?
Yeah. Hey, Troy, this is Brent.
Okay.
Two things. Number one, I was just going to make the comment that we should probably update the yearly so it's accurate. So it's not 2019, 2020, even though these might have started back then. It should reflect the current year. I am totally on board. These are goals. And I want to say bravo for, when I looked at the list that Kendall set out, these goals were rather vague. And the one thing I want to say is, if you mentioned the word SMART goals, which is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. I think that these goals need to be reworded or reworked so that they fit the SMART format, so we know when they're attained and that we can move on, because goals are not static. They are dynamic, and they are something that you do and should achieve so you can go on into other goals.
Yep.
That's
Completely agree. Any other thoughts? Sean, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the comment that, for quite a few years, PRAC annually would labor over goals in January or February, and often not vote on them until April. And while the goals were important, it seemed we got muddled down in it. And if you think about, we meet 10, 11 times a year, we discussed the goals, those 10 meetings worth of goals, for 3 or 4 before we ever achieved them, or before we ever even adopted them. And then I think 3 or 4 years ago, one cycle before this, I brought up the idea of less expanding them to 2 years, keeping with the budget cycle and that the entire city works on. And so when the city commission goes on their retreat in January or February, we would kind of be in sync with that, and we would stretch them out over 2 years. And I think that worked. And then frankly, Troy came along and wanted to reword them and change them so they're measurable. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And so to me, the exercise of sitting here in February and looking at the goals and saying, hey, they're kind of outdated. Well, yeah, they should be, because it's February and it's time to look at them again. And so the document that they have up now and that Troy sent out, I think is very workable. And I think we should all really just kind of table this discussion and read these over and come next month with some suggestions. And, we can email each other back and forth. We can't make decisions in email, but we can always say, hey, here's kind of a draft that I like, or here's a topic that I think is really important that needs to be added. And And then we can discuss those next month. That's my recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Recommendation.
All right,
Thank you.
John, I think you have a great idea there. I mean, we have to be in sync with the city if indeed we want any of this funded, and that's great. And Karen, I do agree with you in the fact that we do have to have a dynamic documentation or document that can be adjusted and amended and updated to where we're thinking right now. And you know, I have like about 5 or 6 ideas that could be added onto this and you know, made something that if it could get on the list, if it's agreed with our committee here, it'd be great. But it's something that I don't know when the forum or when the time would be to add or to adjust some of these goals that we have right here. But it's something that, you know, trail connectivity and signage, it's like, what trails? What connectivity? Nobody in the public knows of a connected trail in Oregon City. All right, so that is something that, oh yeah, it's out there. It's a great idea. Yeah, we need some things that would go ahead and make it adaptable for the entire community. This whole loop trail that goes around Oregon City, I think it's a fantastic idea. And it's part of the Transportation Advisory Committee also to go ahead and do this. But how much of it exists? Like this much, okay? So we have a great idea. And if indeed we could make a 5 or 10% increment to, in attaining that kind of goal, it would be tremendous. So I do have other goals that I'd love to go ahead and put on there, like permanent pickleball nets up at Hillendale. That'd be great and low cost and high impact. So it's something that it'd be lots of fun to have this kind of document to add on to and discuss as we go on.
Okay. Karen, is your hand still up or are you up again?
No, it's back up. It's Karen. Hey,
Okay.
Tim, I'm missing sitting on your deck as I hear the train go by.
Oh,
Karen, we're not understanding you. Something going on with your microphone there.
What? I said, Tim, I'm missing sitting on your deck as I hear the train go by.
yeah, there goes the 905. Yeah. Mhm.
Troy, can you please distribute this to everyone because the rest of us didn't get it?
Yep. Yeah, we'll have a plan for how we're going to handle this before we end this discussion for sure.
Okay, and Kendall, you don't have a crystal ball, but I did identify 3 areas that we're going to have to do a RFP and get a consultant. What can we actually afford to do in the next 2 years?
Before we take the discussion there, let's stick with the goals. That's a different discussion. Did you have anything else for the goals you wanted to bring up?
Troy, I disagree. It's different because we have 3 areas that need to have community input. And if they are going to be top 3 goals, we have to be able to afford the people to coordinate that community input. And I'd like to hear Kendall.
That's fine, but the discussion is about setting the goals. It's not about gathering details of each of the goals. So let's stick with the topic of setting goals. And if we need to go further on each of those goals, we can have that discussion at some point as well.
Hey, Troy, this is Brent. Just real quick input. Karen, if there's these 3 different areas, I would ask that for our next meeting that you come with an outline of what those 3 different areas are, because I'm not quite understanding what they are right now.
Plaquemine Park, Waterboard Park is a budget issue. And oops, I can't get back through Troy's thing. But there are 3 things that I have marked off that we, the deferred maintenance. We were going to have a community input on what was the most important deferred needs. And that also would take an RFP and a consultant.
Okay, Sean?
Tim's comments kind of made me think of something from my standpoint, is that we want a short document, generally 1 page, with our top 5, 6 things. I don't want, like, from my standpoint, if I was guiding the discussion, I would say I want 5 or 6 items, things that I can achieve in that 2 years.
Right.
I don't want to put 10 on there knowing full well that I'm only going to make 3 or 4 items. And I also want to make those things significant. So while I wholeheartedly agree with the pickleball nets, it wouldn't be appropriate for this document. This document is something at a much higher level, I think. And I think that, for example, the signage, the idea, Tim, just to give you some backstory on that, was from Doug Neely. When he leaves one park, he was thinking kind of along the lines of, at least he's thinking 2 parts, but the initial part was kind of like Sun River. When you leave one of the parks, it gives you a guideline to the next park down the way. And there's so many areas that you could get. If you go down this road, you're going to hit that park 1.2 miles away. And so we put that on there because we, 1, believed in it, and 2, to try to show that it's significant enough to give it priority for funding that otherwise would probably not exist. So hopefully that kind of guides us as we move forward, that, you know, when I look through several of these things, I absolutely think they need to be on there, even if they take an RFP and funding, because this shows their importance for when we go for the RFP for funding, or we go to the commission and say, hey, this has been on our priority list for the last 3 years and nobody's paying any attention to it. Why? You know, those are the conversations we should have as we look forward, because otherwise, when you call up a city commissioner and you say, you know, I really want this to happen, and they say, well, why doesn't it even show up on the PRAC's goals? You guys aren't even talking about that topic. Well, at least in this case, we could say, oh, it's been here for 8 years and you haven't been paying attention to us, and now you need to fund it. So hopefully that's my soapbox.
So I appreciate that. So I'd like to put a bow on this one. I like goals, but I don't like talking about goals, because I like to get to the goals and then put them into action so they actually get accomplished. Because I think the real work happens when we actually get out and work and not just talk about what we're going to get done, right? Keep in mind that these goals are things that we as PRAC are going to actually do. We're not just going to talk about at the meetings, but we're going to do them. But they're also what we're going to put to the public. This is a public document that they know what we're focusing on and that they know what they can expect out of us. And so it can't be our pet projects. It can't be what's important to me. It has to be what we believe is important for Oregon City and what we think Oregon City wants, and what they've told us they want, and what we're willing to put forward for them. It can't be what's important to me. So what I'd like to do to move this forward, and I want to move it forward quick, and I'd like to, at our next meeting, have a vote to have the goals done and agreed upon and approved. And so we've got a lot of work to do between now and then, because we can't come back and discuss them next month if we're expecting to have them finished next month. So what I'd like, with everyone's agreement, is Sean, as co-chair, would you and Brent, if you are willing, would the 2 of you work together in the next few days to create for everybody the framework and of around the goals. We have this document here. We're going to start with this document. We're not going to throw it away. This is what we've got. And when I say framework, give us an idea. And I'm just going to ask the 2 of you if you would kind of start this discussion, because to Sean's point, we can discuss outside of the meetings. We can't agree outside the meeting. Right. So just start the discussion, if you will, the framework, and help guide us through email this discussion about the goals, gathering everybody's ideas using this document for reference. And then would you please at the next meeting, and of course, share with everybody before we get to the next meeting, after, considering what you've gathered from everybody, getting feedback and, going back and forth so that it's not new to everybody at the meeting. But then at the meeting, let's be prepared to actually vote on the goals that we've all been discussing and that we all have seen well in advance.
You bet. Absolutely.
That makes sense? So the idea is at the meeting, we're not coming to see it for the first time, but we've all been involved in it. We've all been discussing it. Please involve Kendall in those emails, the emails back and forth. So at least he's kind of seeing that discussion and knows what's going on. We'll talk about it, we'll discuss it. And then at the meeting is when we'll vote on it. And, we'll put together a motion and all that. Is everybody in agreement with that process? That way in the March meeting, we have goals and then we'll work with those goals. And then going forward for the year, we'll review those goals periodically. And if they need to be adjusted or if they have an accomplished date, we'll put the date on there that they've been accomplished. And if we need to bring new goals, I don't want to wait till next January, February to relook at these. But if we need to bring new goals on because something's come to the table that becomes important, we'll certainly put that on there. And if something's been accomplished and it's ready to come off the list, it'll come off the list. Because I think this does need to be a dynamic document for sure.
Yep. Absolutely.
Any questions, feedback, thoughts? Okay, so Sean and Brent, if you guys would have maybe a conversation on that in the next couple of days and then get that conversation started for us, that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, guys. Member reports. Rather than go around the table, not everyone's going to have a member report because not everybody necessarily is representative of a different group within the city. So if you would just raise a hand, we'll just go there. We'll kind of cut this thing as short as we need to. Brent, you've got a report for us.
Yeah, so this is like my first report out. So if I stammer and stumble and everything, please be not used to it. But
that's okay. It's a public meeting and it's recorded, but go ahead.
All right. Glad I mentioned that. So long story short, as we all know, we heard about a house being developed butting up against Park Place Park in the neighborhood, and them wanting to use the right-of-way service road as their driveway, which cuts right between, goes right by a children's playground and cuts right through the park and the off-leash dog area. Out of the 38 parks in Oregon City, Park Place Park is one of the 3 off-leash dog areas. So this is a safety and community issue. To me, it's unacceptable to allow vehicles to serve one lot, plus the construction vehicles to build out that lot in an area where children play. This one and only park in Park Place Park is at risk. So PRAC can help by issuing a letter of support. We would like to see city staff communicate to PRAC what their position is with details for the development of this property. And I would say that PRAC should encourage city staff to find an alternate access for the one property that is landlocked. There are other options up there. There's empty lots where a service road or a driveway could be built. It's not an easy solution and it's not a pretty situation.
Okay, so
started on that. Sorry.
Sure, Tim.
I didn't hear you, Tim. What were you saying?
Has construction started on that building lot?
No, it has not. The owner is a development company based out of Estacada, and they're trying to determine if they're going to put in multiple houses or just one big mega mansion. And there's some environmental concerns with the land lot. I believe that there's some sloping concerns. So to answer your question specifically, Tim, it has not started yet.
Okay, so for clarification, are you giving us a report? It kind of sounds like you're asking us to take an action.
No, I'm kind of, well, that's a good question. For me, this is my report, but it would be good to see, you know, to have city staff let us know what their position is, because this is affecting the one and only park in Park Place neighborhood.
Okay, so since that's your request, that to me sounds like an agenda item. So we
Okay.
can give staff some time to gather, you know, their position.
Okay.
And my question to you, since you've been following this, is there time for that? Is this an urgent matter? Can this be an agenda item for next month? Like, what's our timeline on something like this?
It can be an agenda item for next month. Next month
Okay.
or next two. What I'll do, Troy, is I'll take the action item of going to the neighborhood association, which I believe the next meeting is on March 15th, because I believe that, and I believe that city staff might be presenting at that meeting. I'm not certain, but I will actually, I can go ahead and report out, you know, that I've communicated this. And then if we wanted to have city staff report to PRAC or communicate what their position is, when do we need to do that by?
So Kendall, do you?
There are
understand what the request is?
there are ongoing conversations about this possible development. Based on the information that I've gathered, they're nowhere near being ready to develop any type of home. Nothing has been approved other than some grading that they put in a request to do. This is on the city manager's radar and the city commission's radar. And we're looking at, if they do decide they want to move forward, what are some of the options that we have? But right now, it's a little bit premature.
Has this gone in front of the planning commission yet?
It has, not to my knowledge. The planning department has been made aware of this, Public Works as well. And they're looking into the land and what rights they have versus what rights they don't. So they're exploring every opportunity that we can address this without having a road go through the park, if it comes to that. But right now, it hasn't come to that.
Okay. So I guess my question to you, Kendall, is, you know, what do you feel should be next steps with this?
Next steps for us is letting the planning department and Public Works do their research to see what options we have. I've been in conversation with the city manager. If anything else comes of this and I have additional information to share, I'd be more than happy to provide a report or have someone from planning or Public Works provide a report in regards to kind of where we are. But right now it hasn't escalated to the point to where they're getting ready to submit plans to develop that property.
Okay.
Don.
Just a quick comment that hasn't been brought up. The Parks Department could purchase that property if the owner is willing, and so that's an option to always keep in mind.
Would love that.
So,
Okay, guys,
Kendall,
it's
like,
this Karen with her hand up.
yeah, hang on a second, Karen. So Kendall, I think you keep a list, kind of a side list of future agenda items, don't you?
Yes.
Would you mind putting this on that list, maybe just without a date, just so we don't forget? And then Brent, I'm sure you probably won't forget about this because I know it's important to you, but let's just make sure that we don't forget about this. Even if it is not the right time now, let's make sure we keep it on our minds.
You got it. Thank you.
Karen?
Okay, I'm communicating with the Park Place Neighborhood Association. This appears to be a previous vacation, possibly easement to a piece of privately owned property. And unfortunately, privately owned property trumps. I'm with Kendall. The city is trying all kinds of things to try to address it, come up with alternate routes, etc. But if it is a pre-existing easement onto privately owned property, they prevail. So I think bringing this back next month for an update would be a really good idea.
Okay, any other thoughts or comments? Okay, Karen, do you have your hand up for a report then?
I could do that too. Are we?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
All right, Jonathan. We saw your pictures, but I can't tell which trees are in which places. I know what I'm hearing is cemetery had damage, Rivercrest dropped trees on everything. Where are we with tree damage from the storm?
So I'm going to give an update on kind of where we are with the ice storm and kind of where we are in our response.
Okay.
Yeah, we got staff reports, Karen. We're just doing member reports now. So do you have a member report for us?
No, my member report is I hope we didn't drop too many trees in the cemetery.
Okay. Yeah, let's keep this to member reports. If we want something on the agenda, let's get on the agenda ahead of time, or if it's already in staff reports, we'll handle it then. Does anybody else have a member report to give? No? Okay. Kendall, I'm going to turn it over to you for staff reports.
All right. As everyone is aware, Oregon City was impacted by the ice storm, and our parks and cemeteries experienced a great deal of damage from trees. And our staff has been through so much this past 6 months with the fires, with flooding, with the pandemic, and now the ice storm. And they have just been doing a fantastic job of responding to another crisis. John and his staff, Jenny, Denise, they have been doing triage to respond to the many calls that we've received about fallen trees in the parks, on property, fences. So we've been really trying to focus in on assessing the damage. What are some of the immediate concerns that we need to address right away? We've also done some outreach to work with some additional vendors that are helping us address some of the damage. Some good news is they really sprung into action fairly quickly when this happened. So some of the parks we were able to address. I heard someone say something about Park Place. There was an 80-foot oak on top of the restroom that John was able to take care of and get that removed. The cemetery, Denise was in there with a chainsaw with Dale and many other staff trying to get the cemetery up and running to be able to even do services, because we had some services scheduled. Sportscraft parking lot, we were able to get that cleared. Also the community development building parking lot, we were able to get that cleared as well. The Pioneer Center, we utilized the vendor to help clear the library park. This week, we're really focusing on the initial damage assessment, trying to assess what the damages are and project the number of trees that we've lost, any property damage that has been suffered. We've sent out teams to document with photographs all of our parks, and we've been compiling that information as well. We're focusing in on Clackamas Park, Hillendale, Chapin, Waterboard Park, and Rivercrest this week. 3 of the parks are in pretty bad shape. Waterboard Park, I had the opportunity to walk through Waterboard Park this week and take some pictures there. That is one of the parks that we're looking at closing off to the public until we can make sure that those hazards are removed and that it's safe. That's going to take some time. Singer Creek Park is another park that is in pretty bad shape. And then also Clackamas Park is a park that we're going to have to spend a lot of time on. But the staff has just been awesome. It's been all hands on deck. Everybody has been trying to provide the necessary support, putting in some very long days. And this is going to be a huge project for us. So when we're talking about budget, when we're talking about goals, when we're talking about focus, this is going to be something that we're going to have to address for quite some time. And so this is something that we're going to need some support on as well. But I just want to put this at the forefront because I know Parks is always willing to do whatever needs to be done. But this is going to take a lot of resources. It's going to take a lot of time to address all the different issues in these parks. And we're doing the best we can to make sure that the parks are open and ready to go as quickly as possible. And we're trying to utilize all the resources that we have available in bringing in additional staff as well. And also providing support to Public Works these past weeks with clearing the right of way. So just kudos to John, his team, Denise, Jenny, the aquatic staff have been working in the cove to work the dump site. They have just done a really good job of supporting one another during a very, very difficult time. So just kudos to them for all the work that they've done. And Denise or John, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, just, you know, the storm was catastrophic is the word that I've been using to describe it. You know, Karen, I hear your concerns and, you know, nothing has been taken down. There's a lot of trees that are still just, they're standing skeletons, I guess, in a sense. You know, we're going to do our best to try and save, you know, any of the trees that we possibly can. But this storm was catastrophic, and different trees, different varieties held up better. I think that this will be one that'll go down in conversations with the Columbus Day storm as far as its damage that occurred. But yeah, I think when I talk to Kendall, and I keep telling him we're still working on Rivercrest Park. I keep saying that, and I mean, it's been day after day after day after day of tedious brush removal, and there's just a lot. There's a lot, and so yeah, the word triage is very accurate in that we try to put out the hot spots and move on to the next. But we do have some help that has just most recently come in. That's one of the things that's going to take the longest is the damage that's occurred. We can get in and we can get the brush cleaned up, but the damage that has occurred to the trees, it's going to be a long-term process. We're going to have to monitor them. We were in today at Rivercrest cutting out where the great big oaks in there have they broke off limbs. So we're trying to get those breaks cleaned up, cut back to a good portion of the tree, and then removing hangers. So we were at Chapin first thing. Chapin doesn't obviously have the largest tree canopy of all of our parks, but it has a giant red oak right out front of the park, and we got it all cleaned up. But we had hangers in the tree that are 100 feet high, and there's just really no good way for anybody to access that. So we were able to bring in a boom truck today to try to address those. But even with the boom trucks, sometimes they can't even get to them. Like the library situation, we're going to have to bring in climbers. And there's a lot of demand for people who can do this type of work. And so, yeah, I just ask for some patience and a little bit of grace as we try to maneuver our way through all this.
I think the only thing I'd like to add is making sure that the word goes out that safety is our top concern. We have a lot of things that people aren't accustomed to looking for. They call them widowmakers for a reason. And when you look up, they don't look that big. When they come down, they are very heavy, very dangerous. And so we have a lot of people who are walking underneath these trees. They're just unaware of the hazards that are around them. So if you are talking to people, or if you yourselves are having that desire to want that wilderness adventure, just know that these adventures come with their extreme hazards right now. So we are trying to get that communication out to the public that these are hazardous areas. While we are working in the parks and some of them are still open to the public, the watchful eye on your children. We're using chainsaws and heavy equipment in the parks. So we want people to understand that their safety is our primary course of action as well.
All right. So one bright point outside of the ice storm that I like to bring up, we were able to award the contract for the deferred maintenance assessment and capital improvement plan for our facilities, all of the facilities for Oregon City and our parks. So we're really excited about that. We know that that was one of the goals. We have our first meeting with the consultant tomorrow, and we're very excited about kicking that off. Obviously, we can't control the circumstances, but we're going to continue to move forward. And that is scheduled to hopefully be completed by the end of April, so we can have a better understanding of where we are with our facilities and our parks and actually have a plan moving forward. So there'll be multiple presentations by the consultant to PRAC and also to the City Commission, and progress reports will be given. So we're really excited about that. The other thing is, I know there's been some questions about the vacant position and the applicants, the recruitment for the vacant position for PRAC that closed February 15th. We have 10 applicants for that position. Right now, Katie is working on the logistics of getting me access to those applicants. We will have some additional information coming out in the next several weeks. So you will have the opportunity to review the applicants and hopefully have a time where we can get those interviews scheduled. And that is all I have. You have a question for me, Sean?
First of all, did you say 10?
10.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. And this, it relates to membership, but it's really for the chair and you. I noticed we only have 6 tonight. That leaves 2 missing. Were either of those excused?
Derek did give me a call and let me know the circumstances behind him not coming. The last meeting, Jeff did talk to me about some issues that he was dealing with, but I haven't talked to him recently.
Okay. In general, I mean, I'm sensitive to people if they're having technology issues or power issues, obviously, especially in the last week or two. But in general, if people miss about 2 or more meetings a year, it's usually the chair or the parks director will start kind of communicating with them their need to attend, or, you know, see if they really still want to be a part of this group. So I just thought I'd bring that up.
Yep. In both those cases, there were extenuating circumstances. Any
Kendall, is
other?
that the end of your reports?
Yes.
Okay, future agenda items. What I have, please listen carefully because I've been known to miss some things and I don't want to miss something that might have been important to you. So as we were going over Newell Creek, I made a note about the piece of land that the city owns. I don't know, and tell me if you guys think differently. I'm open. I don't know if we need to talk. I don't know if we want to have that as an agenda item or if we just want some information on what that, on where that was left off. And I think we're okay with that. Kendall, I don't know if you can just maybe send us out some information, just to kind of keep us, I guess, informed as to if there was a decision made on that, if there wasn't a decision made on that. I mean, we're not in a position as PrAC to even make a decision, but we would like to just at least know if something was decided. And if not, if it's planned that that conversation is going to be happening again at some point, or if it's just completely off the table. Just so we're kind of in the know. So that's more of a task than or an item of interest than it is an agenda item at this point. And then Sean and Brent are going to have the framework and start the conversation around goals. Hopefully in the next maybe 2 to 3 days, start that. I will get out in an email tomorrow to everybody the goals that I have. Unless, Kendall, you want to do it, I'm totally okay doing it, unless you want to do it. It doesn't matter to me.
I'm comfortable with you doing it.
Okay, I'll do it. I will totally do it. I'm going to send those out, and I'm going to go ahead and send them out in a Word document as opposed to a PDF. That way, if you want to, if everybody wants to print it off and write on it, you can. But if you'd rather just, type right on it, you can do that. That way, you can do it however you want. But we're going to let Sean and Brent start that conversation. So if they want to give us some parameters to follow, some questions to answer, however you guys want to start that conversation, we'll follow your lead. And then an agenda item for the future was the Park Place Road, but that's a future agenda item with no specific date at this point, just something to keep on our minds and our radar. That's all I have from our discussion today. Is there anything that I missed that was brought up? Yeah, Brent.
Troy, the only thing I want to say is Karen made a comment that it should be brought up in the next meeting. Karen, did you want to elaborate on that regarding Park Place and the row?
I think I just wanted an update because I know the city's going to be working on that during the upcoming month.
And what type of update are you looking for? Or who are you looking for that from me or?
No, actually, that would Kendall probably, or somebody from planning that could let us know if there has been an option identified.
Okay.
So Kendall, rather than give it its own agenda item, you want to include just something that you might know about that in your staff report for next month?
Sure.
Whatever you might know from discussions that come about.
All right.
Okay. Anything else? Nope. Okay. Next meeting is scheduled for March 25th, 7 p.m. Same time, same place. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.